Good morning and good afternoon, everyone who's just joined. Great to have all of you here. I'm Manal Amin, founder of DiligenceVault, and I'm excited to be joined by my colleague, Ryan Wilding, who is from our product team. Thank you for joining us today, sessions for how to build an AI agent for due diligence. Before we dive in, you'll see a quick poll on your screen. Please take a few seconds to fill that out. We'd love to get your insights, and that would also form how we also address this particular webinar. And then we'll be also sharing the poll results in the takeaways. So this webinar will run for about 45 minutes, and we really want this to be interactive. So please send in your questions at any time using the Q&A chat. And then we'll address that before we wrap up the webinar. And for those of you who are new to DiligenceVault, we are a technology platform built for asset managers and allocators to digitize, streamline, and centralize the entire due diligence process. Most of the audience today are asset allocators, and we have a few asset managers who have joined. But please note that this webinar is more for the asset allocator use case. We will have a separate webinar for asset managers, so stay tuned for that, but more to come. We will leave the poll open for a few seconds because I think people are still answering. But let's start with a quick scenario. Imagine your team is evaluating a new manager, and within a few days, you receive, say, a 50-page PPM, a 40-page DDQ, regulatory filings, monthly, quarterly letters, pitch decks, ESG disclosures, and a lot of different documentation. And now the research and the analyst team has to answer questions like, is this a good strategy? Has the strategy changed over time? What are the fees and liquidity terms? Who are the service providers? What is the operational construct? Are there any conflicts? So what do they end up doing is that they read, and then they read. And most diligence team today, as we all know, are not limited by judgment, but usually it's by the information overload, which is only increasing over time. And analysts spend still a lot of time with reading, extracting, cross-checking, and writing memos. And that is exactly the type of problem that AI is looking to solve. And I think we will be covering some of those use cases. So I'm going to end this poll now so we can go through rest of the webinar, and please always ask questions. Okay. So when we analyze how diligence teams actually spend time, the results were quite surprising. 60 to 80% of the time was spent in collect, read, extract, cross-check, and write. In other words, a lot of data processing. And less time was reserved for judgment. And that is where AI will change equation for a lot of the teams, where it's really good at reading large documents, extracting structured information, identifying patterns. And then that is a shift that we will all see, where AI will become the information processing engine, leaving a lot of the human judgment for the team. What we've also seen is over the last 2 years, we've been talking to a number of our clients as we've been developing functionality on DiligenceVault to see what are the common use cases for due diligence teams that they think AI will be helpful. And we've seen 5 different ones. The first one is primary research, where you're looking at information in public domain and creating summaries and flagging risks. And then there are 4 other things which are on the top 4 that you see on the screen, which is DDQ or framework mapping, detecting risks, generating memos, and processing documents, which use a lot of the information that you collect usually directly from the managers. And then why these use cases is because they have 4 characteristics that are in common. They all deal with a very large volume of unstructured information. There's a lot of repetitive pattern. They all have structured outputs that usually we need. And then there is a clear evaluation criteria that the teams take to come up with these output. And as a result, these are the exact types of tasks where AI will perform best with the current AI that we have. So let's use more context. What do we mean by framework mapping? So imagine you want to do something like take a pitch deck of, say, 20 managers that have pitched to you in a month, and then rank a manager against your internal criteria. Or you want to read through 3 years of monthly and quarterly letters of a few managers and create a timeline of changes across, say, strategy, risk exposures, team changes, and then portfolio positioning. Now, that is the kind of work that will take us hours to do, but it's also the type of work that AI can do in seconds, right? So AI can read all these documents, extract the information, and then create a structured timeline. And I think these are the things where once you have that data, the team can spend time in aligning if the strategy is aligning with what they claim to run based off of the results that they have provided. The next use case would be document processing and extraction. On an average, we see, from at least from our clients, that they review up to 20 documents during the initial diligence for a given manager and fund, and then similar magnitude from an ongoing monitoring or RIA perspective. And a lot of focus today on use of AI is on model selection, but the real value that brings magic to AI is the structured data pipeline. So when you put documents as an input, it creates a certain output. But if you put structured data as an input to AI, the output is so much better. So AI can help convert these documents by extracting key data points, whether it's AUM, performance, service providers, fees, liquidity terms, any clauses that are outliers, and create a library of those terms so that the team can spend time on creating dashboards on outliers, on risk monitoring dashboards to see what's changed, as well as more peer comparison. So document processing is another use case. The third one that we all know is we all think about AI as a way to detect risk. And this is a cliche thing that we all have heard a lot, is think about AI as a junior analyst that never sleeps. But it can also be built, an agent can be built to understand your criteria of what you think is a risk, and then flag them to create a structured repository of risk, right? So you can have a risk flag, it can cite the source from where it's collected, and then based off of your criteria, you can calibrate and say whether it's a high, medium, or low, because as we all know, that one allocator may view certain risk as high versus other may view it as low, so it can be customized for each firm, right? And it's a great starting point because it gives you a structured first pass at risk assessment. And then one of the last ones that we'll talk about here is the investment memo generation. We all know that we spend a lot of time creating outputs, whether it's a 5-page memo or a 40-page memo, where the analysts spend a lot of time assembling information like strategy overview, team backgrounds, risk, scores, track record, operational infrastructure, and drafting a memo, but AI can generate the first draft. But that's the important thing, that it has to be the first draft and not the final decision. It's very easy to take AI-generated content because it looks good, but also to verify and then analysts to validate the information before it gets ready for our consumption. And that combination of AI and the analyst is where the memo generation time is going to be reduced by 50 to 70%. So with that, I will hand it off to Ryan, who can start going into implementing an AI agent using the tools that everyone has today. So over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Mona. Understanding AI. I'd say first it's important to clarify that almost all current AI systems are ANI, which is artificial narrow intelligence. That means they perform one specific task extremely well. Some examples are reading documents, extracting information, or generating summaries. Next is AGI, or artificial general intelligence. That would be AI that can reason across any domain like a human can. This does not exist yet. The next level is artificial superintelligence, and this is purely theoretical. The AI systems we are discussing are specialized, and they're built on 3 core components here. So component 1, a prompt library, which contains the instructions telling the AI precisely how to execute a task. Next, retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, is what gives the AI the specific relevant context, the documents or the data that it should use to generate a response. Finally, the LLM. So this is the engine that generates the final response based on that prompt and context. So what does a good prompt look like? Before we jump into AI agents, let's ground ourselves in the simple idea of the output quality starts with your prompt quality. So here we're showing data from real world usage, classifying what actually shows up in effective prompts. At the top is iteration and refinement, highlighting that prompting isn't a one and done. The best results come from testing and improving and iterating. What's important here is that all these elements matter. Strong prompts clarify the goal, they provide examples, they define structure, set tone, etc. It's not about picking one technique, it's about combining all of them together to form a strong prompt. It's especially relevant today. Prompting is no longer just asking a question, chatting. In AI agents, prompts become instructions for action, showing how the agent reasons and prioritizes, responds. So think of prompting as a practical skill. It's how we translate the business intent into the effective AI behavior. The art of prompt engineering. So taking this a step further, again, the quality of the AI output directly correlates with the precision of the input. So we must move beyond the generic prompting. First, what a vague prompt is simply asking an LLM to summarize a document, for example, which results in generalized outputs that still need significant human effort and iterations. Solution to this is providing structured prompts. So by giving the specific targeted instructions, you guide it to extract the precise information that you need in your workflow. The ultimate goal is embedding your firm's proprietary frameworks directly into your AI instructions, and then you can have more consistency. So what you need to build an AI agent. So first, good prompts. These are the instructions, the secret sauce that we just discussed. Next, good context. So this is the data you provide, documents, data pipelines, internal knowledge bases. It's what the AI uses to generate a response. Clear output format. So you also need to define what you want the AI to return. Is it a structured risk table, a summary and bullet points, or filled out framework? So the interesting part here is that you don't need a massive dedicated platform to begin experimenting with these tools. You can actually build a simple, powerful AI diligence agent for yourself today using tools like custom GPT from OpenAI, Claude Skills from Anthropic, Gemini Gems from Google. So while you can start those today, scaling institutional AI offers powerful benefits. So including you can automate a significant amount of repetitive tasks and build AI literacy across your team. And so we will jump in to Gemini today and show a quick example. So here we are in Gemini. You can see here the chat. So we've added a document. This is also a publicly available document where all the documents we're using today. And we just did a basic prompt, brief summary or risk from the doc. Here, it was able to ingest the document and generate a few high-level, not very detailed summaries, market investment risks, operational, and regulatory. So it gives some good information, but we can definitely take this a step further. Here, we have an ability to create what Gemini calls a gem. So this is an offering docs analyst. We can name it here, add a description of what this will do, and then instead of just a short prompt, we've included here complete instructions. So outlining and clarifying the goals, the specific tasks, the structure of how we want this doc to be analyzed. This also creates a repeatable and reusable process and more consistent process for analyzing these that can be shared and used by across your firm. So once that's all provided, we have this created. No need to add an additional prompt. I've uploaded the document. Hit run. You'll see it's pulling out and extracting and organizing a lot of the information in a more digestible format and according to our specific instructions. New other options, export to sheets, as this is a table. More detail on the risk and observations, red flags. We also included asking it to suggest follow-ups. So we can do that as well. And this can be repeated and used across other docs. These are pretty, once you invest in setting up the instructions and using your firm's guidelines, then you can create this repeatable process. We've also created a sustainability analyst here. So here's across 3 docs. We can run this one as well. Document classification, ESG assessment. So you'll see pretty extensive what you can do with this. Back over to you, Mona.
Yeah, I think we can address some of the questions
Okay.
that we've received, because I think it's kind of tied to what we just showed as well. So I think one of the question is, I have run into issues with AI agents pulling data from certain document types like PDFs. Is there a different method of prompting that needs to happen for an agent to extract from these documents? So I'll take the first draft and then Ryan, if you can add. So I think this is a known problem with LLMs, is that it will miss certain information if the context window is very large. So it depends on what is the context window of the model that you're using. Advanced techniques, that's why folks use RAG and chunking, and then also an evaluation layer on top of it. But if you ask specific prompt saying exactly what you're looking for, that will also improve the accuracy overall. But I think it very much depends on the context window of the model. So that is something that you want to verify, and that if it can support that document. And one of the other things to mention as well is there is a tendency that we've seen is people just want to upload all possible documents and get AI to look for things. And this is where the issue happens, is if you have poor context itself, if you're loading too much information, the model context window doesn't align with that. And if your prompt isn't the most optimal, you will get suboptimal outputs. But Ryan, any questions or anything to add there?
Nope.
Okay. So I think we get, if whoever's posted this is anonymous, so we don't know who it is, but if you want to reach out, we can definitely dive a bit deeper and provide some additional suggestions. Okay. Yes, I think there's a question is, could you share a copy of the presentation? Yes, we will be sending that. So we will be sharing that along with the results of the poll. So we will definitely be sharing that with everyone. The next question is, how did you come up with that massive prompt? So that is something we have, Glenn, so thank you for that question. We have spent a lot of time building that. AI could be a source of helping you build that, but we've done a lot of iterations to come up with the prompts, and we can definitely share if that's of interest. We can share some starter prompts as well, but ultimately you would want to modify it for your own use cases and how you think about uh, some of these risks internally within your investment office. Uh, Okay, there's one more question. How does it know if a term is standard or not? What knowledge base is being used? So Hans, for this purposes, we did not customize the knowledge base. We were just using the general, say, Gemini knowledge base that it has, or if you're using ChatGPT or Copilot, their knowledge base is generally what we can, but on DiligenceVault, we definitely fine tune it further. And I think people can also upload knowledge base. So whether you're creating a GEMS or a custom GPT or a Copilot or Claude skills, they also have a place to actually add knowledge base. So we'll actually send a screenshot of where to add that in each of those in one of the follow-ups that we'll send. Okay. All right. I found the form. So another question is, I found format can certainly affect Word text docs are more easily parsable than PDFs. Ryan, do you have a view on this one?
So format can certainly, yeah. There's different tools that ingest the data. I would say it converts, a lot of these tools convert to a straightforward text format in the end. So they extract the data from the PDF, convert it to a standardized format, and then send it to the model to interpret it. So most of those are handled today. PDFs, Excel, PowerPoint, a lot of doc formats. And we also handle those in DiligenceVault.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan. There's also a question, do you recommend Gemini over something like Copilot? Why use Gemini for this example? So we wouldn't recommend one model over the other. I think all the model providers have pretty decent capabilities. Some may be better for certain type of work and certain type of inputs. We use Gemini because last night we had the same webinar and we were using ChatGPT and we ran into some technical issues. So we just pivoted to Gemini today. But the idea is these agents, do-it-yourself agents, can be built on any of them. All model providers have that capability. And I think, of course, if you ask Ryan and our AI engineering team, they have a preference of what models to use when. But I think for the do it yourself, I think most of them should give you decent results. My company has Copilot, not Gemini. Does that make a difference? No, it will generally not make a difference. You might see some accuracy differences on the margin, but that's just my view. Ryan, anything to add here?
No.
Okay. Okay, there's a lot of questions. Do you want to take some of those? Okay, here's the one. What type of, sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say there's one. Could you please detail what is considered to be a good prompt? What are some good key points that are required in a good prompt? So clearly setting up the goal, the task that AI should perform, providing good examples and what the outcome should be, defining the structure of what the outcome should be. You can also set the tone, and then say if you want to flag any risks, you can have a section for that, as an example. But one recommendation that we have is LLMs are great at helping you craft a prompt as well. So you can use it and say, this is our workflow, this is what we want, these are our goals. Help us define a prompt that we can reuse. And then, of course, you want to review that or find it. But always iterate and analyze the output and then make adjustments to your prompt from there.
Thanks, Ryan. I think there's one more question around model. What type of agents would you suggest for something like Microsoft Copilot? How does one find these? We will send some helper materials along with the takeaways that we send of how to create gems, how to create custom GPT, how to create something in Copilot, and then how to create something in Claude Skills, because these are the 4 models that we use. So we'll follow up with those details. Okay. Alrighty. So another question, I've found it difficult to get consistent output from AI tools, often finding output vary even when the same prompt is run more than once. Any best practices for getting a standardized output format? So Aaron, that's a very, very great feedback. That is just the reality of how the underlying models are. They are not deterministic. So as a result, same document, same prompt will still yield different results. I think the best practice to get a standardized output format is to actually embed what you're expecting as an output and strict guidelines within the prompt itself. Given you are a TV user, the other alternative is we'll show you how the same can be achieved on DiligenceVault right after we finish this Q&A. You can also see that, because I think there we have done some of that engineering that we have done is to make sure that the output is always consistent and structured so that people can build good data pipelines. So if data is sensitive, do I need to consider leakage into AI general space? So Paul, yes, that is something we are going to cover in a little bit, but yeah, we would always say that always use the enterprise versions. And then there are some data settings you can change as well. And we will, again, send that as a follow-up of how to do that. But that is absolutely necessary to do. So to avoid that information being used for further and future model training, the risk around security also magnifies because now a lot of the models, and as people are building agents, you can have connectors, you can have MCPs, you can have plugins. So we have some best practices that we'll share right after. So we'll do that as well. I think there are 10 more questions, but we will get to them, but I'm going to just hit a pause because I think some of the questions that are coming in are something that we might just address in the next couple of slides. So just bear with me. Let me just share my screen again. And then we'll address the rest of the questions before we end the webinar. Share the screen. All right, so this is where we left off, where Ryan showed you what we had built. And I think we have great questions as well that have come up from that, which is fantastic. Now, as we think about, as you saw, it's very easy to build something, right? And you can build something that is powerful with the right prompt, and we will send some instructions there. But one of the things that is very critical, and I think, Paul, you asked a question about security, is how exactly do you trust the output of AI? I think we also heard some questions about that it's readable output. So I'll probably start with a story. Like one diligence team we spoke with had actually created an AI agent to review the ADB filings. And then the agent flagged no real issues. But then the analyst reviewed and they found a disciplinary disclosure embedded on, say, page 57. And the AI had missed it because of document chunking. And that moment is when something is important. AI is incredibly helpful, but it will still require guardrails and human in the loop to fix some of these issues. So as we think about what are the focus areas as you use more AI, is auditability, is can we track what happened? Explainability, can we explain why AI created this output? Accuracy is, are the results right today? And do they stay right, or does the response quality degrade? Or as I think, Aaron, you were saying, how do you make sure that the answers are not variable? Security is going to be a big aspect, and that's why we've included some other aspects here, is as people start building in connectors and plugins and MCPs, it's important that your IT team reviews the security considerations around extra cookies and file permissions, authentications, least privilege actions, and keystroke logging, among few things. I mean, McKinsey's AI agent breach that was covered recently was all around authentications and how there were some unauthenticated endpoints out there, and that resulted in it. It was just a security company testing it. It wasn't a bad actor, so that was a good thing, but that's just something to be mindful of. And some of the things we also talked about is also understanding when AI will fail. It is an incredibly powerful technology, but it will sometimes generate unsupported claims. So it's always critical to make sure there is an audit trail, and then you verify the source. Long documents will be partially analyzed from time to time. So you do want to make sure that you replace a document pipeline with a structured data pipeline. And if you must use documents, then you can use techniques like RAG and chunking, and also an evaluation layer on top of it. And then industry terms and regulatory language can be misinterpreted. For example, if you tried asking for AFS, it might say audited financials one day, it might say available for sale the another day. So you want to make sure that there are prompts, rules, and frankly, human in the loop to evaluate the results. And then lastly, AI will sound certain, even when wrong. And even if you correct it with wrong information, it will agree with you. So as a result, we will need confidence scoring to validate the AI output. So instead of taking AI output as is, and then ultimately human in the loop to review the output before it goes out. Ryan, anything to add before we probably switch into a little bit of showing you a little bit of the AI architecture on DiligenceVault?
Just that human in the loop part is always critical, and the confidence scoring, self-evaluating, or creating ways to evaluate the outputs and auditing those is definitely critical.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So as we think about an AI system, right? So you can have a do-it-yourself AI agents, but ultimately you would want a multi-layer intelligence system. So some of the AI architecture questions that have come up about models sometimes working, not working, how to build the prompt library, how to create the prompt. So DV has created an AI architecture layer at the base, and on top of that sits client's data pipeline, so whether it's documents or data. And then ultimately you want an orchestration layer. Because what we showed today is we showed you two different agents. One is an offering docs agent, and the other one was a sustainability agent. But the reality is you also want to fine tune this further depending on the type of the underlying asset class you're looking at, and then also the type of the review you are doing. So for example, are you looking at a new manager? Is it a re-up? Is it an ongoing monitoring process? All of those would have different workflows that you may have. So you may want to piece it all together. And then ultimately you want to have a business logic layer where not everyone views the same risk the same way. Not everyone views some of the upside opportunities the same way. So having your own business layer that sits on top of it. And then of course, DV has some system prompts as well that we've built in. So it's a combination of those, which really makes the AI system work and a true like multi-layer intelligence system. Agent as well as agent with agentic orchestration within DiligenceVault. But as you think about what is the AI IP that allocators will have, and that's just the reality is all allocators will have to develop their own AI IP. And we argue that there are four components. So one, we've stressed enough about prompt library, the quality of the prompt, but each allocator should have their own systematized and then mandate specific prompt library that matches your world of your view of the world. And then that is something that everyone can use within your firm. Then an AI workflow. So yes, you have the AI output, but then who validates it, who reviews it, who are the checkpoints that to make sure that the output of the AI actually is validated. Your own structured data pipeline. So the immediate right now, a lot of people still use documents as the input, but structured data pipeline is going to be a big differentiator. And then ultimately the feedback loop. What prompts you have today are great, but over time, as new risks come in or your own framework changes, you have to go back and redo the prompts as well. So that prompt governance and the feedback loop. So I would say these are the four components that all allocators would need to create their own AI IP, because the future is definitely morphing into when the diligence first step is likely to, and I shouldn't say always yet, but is likely to be the AI layer, then the research team and the analyst layer, and then ultimately the decision-making authority. So I think it's initially there were two components, and now I think we have three components. That's only going to accelerate how we all work. So I think I'll just leave everyone with that thought, and then we'll go back to answering the questions. So any other questions that folks have? So based on what we've discussed, otherwise we'll go through the existing questions that we have as well. So in your example where AI extracts information from PPM, did you define red flags and missing information ahead of time? So the answer is yes, we did define based off of the criteria that we thought was relevant and what we would always look for as a proxy to an allocator. But a lot of these models also have general knowledge that they've built from the original training data set, but we did define as well to make sure that it did not give us red flags that were not material to us. Ryan, anything to add here?
Yeah, just that just reiterating that it will have its baseline. Like if you don't provide it any risk or flags to look for, it will still come up with some, right? But really you want to identify what exactly it should pull out. So it's more of a structured process.
Yep. Oh, thanks, Ryan. Next question is, does the free version of these models, are they adequate or do you need the paid version? John, we haven't experimented with the free version with like real workflows. We would always advocate for paid versions because it does give you more control, better access to model capacity. I think some of the free versions we know definitely hit rate limits very quickly. So if you need it, and you probably won't have it when you need it if everyone else is using it, versus paid definitely has a better tier, better model access as well. And it definitely has better tooling in terms of what you can do with the paid version as well. But I'd be curious to see what your experience has been if you have used the free version. So this presentation is being used for documents that are sent through DV. Is that correct? So I don't know when this came. This can be used for any document. It doesn't have to be just documents through DV. The documents that Ryan was showing were picked directly from, we Googled and found real life documents that were publicly available. And some of the ones that I showed were also the same ones that we uploaded. But yes, you could use documents within DV, or you can upload new documents if you are a DV user. For the organizations that are just getting started with AI, are there any best practices on implementing governance guardrails? What are the key components to have in place before turning on AI capabilities? Are organizations used with confidential data? We will send you best practices that we have developed for our clients, where we have created an AI acceptable use governance framework. So we can also share that as one of the follow-ups to this particular, because I think it's not something I can cover in 10 seconds. It's a pretty elaborate document, so we can happy to share that. Are these DV features included in the cost of DV, or is that an additional cost? So DV has a module called DV Assist, which has all of DV's AI features. So whoever's asking this question, if you are a client of DV that has DV Assist, then you would have the DV capabilities. What we just showed is an early preview, but as we release more functionality, it is all part of the DV Assist toolset. Can you walk us through the payment structure of obtaining the service? So I'm assuming if this is around what Ryan showed, that is your existing LLMs that you could use. So you would pay them. There is no payment to creating the agents within the LLMs. If you're talking about DiligenceVault, please reach out to us through our website. You can contact us or just reply to the email that you receive when you get the takeaways, and we can chat about that. Okay. All right. One of the biggest challenges we have encountered is when testing ChatGPT with a SharePoint connector. while it can produce a solid start, the quality drops off meaningfully after the first 1 or 2 pages, which is an issue given our memos are typically around 20 pages. Ryan, do you want to take this?
Sure. So when you're using ChatGPT, it's a general chat, it may not be using or is likely not using any retrieval augmented generation. So this is where you have a pipeline set up to store documents and then easily access the information from those documents when generating responses. So that helps when you have a lot of documents, a lot of content to generate responses there. So yeah, in a normal chat, the larger the documents, it may lose context when it's generating. Also, if you're generating long, if you want the output to be extensive, it may not retrieve and generate as you want, right, or as accurately. So yeah, without a structured pipeline put in place, there can be issues there, and we've seen that a lot. Yep.
Okay. So I think that there's another question. Are those risks from docs or their Gemini's interpretation? So I think the answer is both. We had some prompt guidelines from within the docs. So it was only referencing the documents, but it could also be Gemini's interpretation if we had not given it the guidelines in the prompt itself. How can DV users leverage these AI capabilities? So I would say if you are a DV user, please reach out to your client success manager. And if you're not using DVSs, we can definitely talk about that. Right, there's another question. Have you experimented with FinTool and do you have any feedback? I haven't. Ryan, have we experimented with FinTool?
I'm not.
No, so no feedback yet. But Jeff, we can probably look into that and see if we have a viewpoint and we'll follow up. All right, last 3 questions. Any tips or tricks or process recommendations for human validation of the AI output? Asking it to extract data from a massive PPM and trusting it to pull the right information on key terms, fees, risks is a big deal, especially if it's prone to errors. Ryan, do you want to take this?
Yep. So this part of this goes back to the strength of your prompt and instruction, and making sure there's validation checks. So first, yeah, in your prompt, clearly identifying what you want to pull out in terms of key terms, fees, and risks. The more detail, usually the better. So what type of fees need to be pulled out? And giving a good example of those will go a long way. And then also iterating on it. So carefully reviewing the output and then tweaking the prompt a little bit, or if you're building a multi-step agentic workflow, then having the human validation steps in there to make sure it's not drifting off track.
Okay. And then maybe this is a little bit of plug on DV. So one of the things we have done is once the extraction is completed, our evaluation layer runs through it and says, here's the high confidence output. So we have 6 evaluators that evaluate the work of AI, the first AI, and it'll say, okay, here are high confidence ones, and here we have limited confidence. So if you're using DV, then please use that functionality because that will really free up your time in doing the review. Is it a security risk to download PDFs in these AI softwares? I don't know what the best answer for this is, Zach, but
Is this
sorry, go ahead.
I'm curious if it's asking like from an LLM what it generates? Is that the
Yeah, I didn't understand the question. So maybe it's saying that can we upload documents into these AI softwares? So I think that is for each firm to decide what their acceptable use is. If you have bought the enterprise version, if you have hardened some of the controls that are available from a settings perspective, if you have built the perimeter and implemented some DLPs around use of these, then your team, your IT team can advise on whether it's secure or not. We don't know your setup to decide that. Or is the output, we don't know the questions. If you want to just reach out to us, we can have a conversation about this as well. Okay. Could you also share the recording? We will share some of the recordings. Yes, we will share parts of the recordings and along with the deck. And then are there any courses you recommend for prompt training, Ryan? There are too many.
Yeah, there's a ton out there. There's a ton of free resources. Also, if you have or if your firm is using ChatGPT or Gemini, you can ask it to provide you a training and teach you directly there as well. So there's plenty out there. Yeah.
I think as a follow-up, because there were so many questions on prompt, we will definitely share one of the prompts that we had, just with different structures and what was the intent of each of those. So that could be a guideline as well for, say, an industry-specific prompt as well. Yep. Okay. I think we're done with all the questions. Any other questions? If not, or any last questions from anyone? Yep. Okay. Ryan, anything else to add?
Oh, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. And thank you also for making it interactive with all your questions. We will be sending the follow-ups that we've discussed, including the deck, part of the recording, and some of the resources. Good luck with building your AI agents. All right. Take care.
Thanks.